When we're solving equations, whether it's one-step, two-step, or multi-step, the whole point is to isolate the variable, which means it's to get the variable all by itself, which is the x in this case. So I like to put down my barrier here so I can distinguish between one side of the equation, which is this one, and the other side of the equation, which is the 9. So what we have here is on the left-hand side, we have x minus 5. On the right-hand side, it equals 9. So this quantity equals 9. And we're going to use inverse operations. Those are the opposite operations that we see in the problem. So in this case, we have x minus 5. In order to isolate this variable, which means we want the variable to be by itself, we're going to do the inverse of subtract 5, which gives you plus 5. What we do to one side, we have to do to the other side to keep it balanced. You want to think about like a seesaw. If you put someone who weighs 50 pounds here, this seesaw is going to go down, so you need to put someone who's 50 pounds here, and then it'll be balanced. So now we have our variables isolated because negative 5 plus 5, they're opposites, so in a sense they're going to give you a 0. And then we have the x all alone. It doesn't matter if you have a plus or a minus here because x minus 0 is x and x plus 0 is x. And then we have 9 plus 5 is 14. So we have x equals 14. And if you look at the equation, if you substitute 14 in for the x, you get 14 minus 5 is 9. This problem is a little bit different from the one on the quiz because we had a negative 9, but the format is still the same. Take a look at the problem down here. In this case, you have variables on both sides. You have a 7x and an 8x here. We need to collect the variables, move them through inverse operations from one side here to the other side, or we can move them from the right side to the left side. In figuring out what to do, you want to say, well, I have a number here, and I know that I need to put all the variables on one and the numbers on the other. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to subtract 7x. Because 7x minus 7x gives you nothing. And you're left with negative 5 equals 8x minus 7x is x. So this is your final answer here. If you went and substituted in the negative 5 for the x here, you would have negative 35 minus 5 equals 8 times negative 5, which is negative 40, and negative 35 minus 5 is negative 40. This problem is a two-step equation. We have 12x minus 4 equals 140. When you have two-step equations, you do the opposite of what you would do in order of operations. With order of operations, if you remember, if you had a problem that was like 3 plus 2 times 6 minus 5, you would do the multiplication first. You would do 3 plus 12 minus 5, and then you would go left to right. You would get 15 minus 5, and you would get 10. Well, when you are trying to find the value for x, you're actually doing the opposite of what you did with the order of operations. So you have to get rid of the adding and the subtracting first. So in this case, you would add 4 to both sides. And negative 4 plus 4 gives you 0, which is why you see us just cross it out. And you have 12x equals 144. Now remember, we're trying to solve for x, not 12x, so we're not quite done. This is a multiplication problem, and you would solve it by the inverse, which is dividing both sides by 12, because you would have 12 divided by 12 is 1. 1x is the same thing as x, and your answer here would be x equals 12. I'm going to do a quick review on the single step with fractions. This problem reads as 1/2 x is 8, or half of a number is 8. Half of what number is 8? Well, you might think 4, because 8 divided by 2 is 4. So think about it. Half of 4 equals 8. Well, no, because half of 4 is 2, so that's not it. Half of what? Oh, half of 16. Okay, half of 16 is 8. My eraser's not very good here. So if we think half of 16, so half of x is 8. How am I going to get x is 16 by looking at this number? Well, some of you may say, well, I'm going to multiply by 2. And that's exactly what you're doing. You are multiplying by the reciprocal. Reciprocal of 1/2 is 2 over 1. And that's where you get your 16. So when you have a fraction, you can look at this and say, well, isn't this a multiplication problem? It is. So could you just say, well, I'm going to divide both sides by 1/2? Absolutely. This says 8 divided by 1/2, which is 8 times 2 over 1. So what we're doing when we multiply by the reciprocal in this step is we're jumping down to this step when we do regular fraction division. So how does that help with solving this equation? Well, remember we're going to undo the adding and subtracting first. So we're going to subtract 2. And we have 3/4 x equals 4. Now we are going to multiply, that's your multiplication. If you want, you can put a dot, by the reciprocal, which is 4/3. I put a 1 under the 4 just so I know that I am going to be multiplying 3 by 1. Now 4/3 times 3/4, 4/3 is 12. 3/4, or 4 times 3 is 12. That gives you your 1x. And then 4 times 4 is 16, and 1 times 3 is 3. And your answer is 16/3, or 5 1/3. Now on this page you have 2 practice problems to do, and on the following page there are 2 more practice problems to do. I'd like you to work on these and then just email me the answers. I'll be sending your quizzes over in a separate email.